Hare Krishna. Do you play Mridanga? Do you know how to play Karatals? I think they're Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalava Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavalava Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai. Would you kindly take away this? Bitte.
Oh, you don't need to.
No. Thank you. Hare Krishna, welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. We continue in the 4th canto, chapter 24, entitled Chanting the Song Sung by Lord Shiva. We are at text 56. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yatra Nirvishtam Aranam Kritanto Nabhimanyate Vishvam Vidvamsayan Virya Shaurya Vispurjita Pruva Yatra Nirvishtam Aranam Yatra nirvishtam aranam kritanto nabhimanyate kritanto nabhimanyate Vishvam vidvam sayan virya Vishvam vidvam sayan virya Shaurya vispurchita bhruva Shaurya vispurchita bhruva Yatra nirvishtam aranam Kritanto nabhimanyate Vishvam vidvam sayan virya Shaurya vispurchita bhruva Yatra nirvishtam aranam Kritanto nabhimanyate Vishvam vidyam sayan virva Shaurya vispurchita bhruva Yatra nirvishtam aranam Kritanto nabhimanyate Vishvam vidvam sayan virya Shaurya vispurchita bhruva Yatra wherein Nirvishtam aranam a completely surrendered soul Krita antaha invincible time Na abhimanyate does not go to attack Vishvam the entire universe Vidvam sayan by vanishing Virya prowess Shaurya influence Vispurchita simply by expansion Bhruva of the eyebrows. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Simply by expansion of his eyebrows, invincible time personified can immediately vanish the entire universe. However, formidable time does not approach the devotee who has taken complete shelter at your lotus feet. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 10:34, it is said that the Lord, in the shape and form of death, destroys all a person's possessions. Mrityu sarva arascharaham. I am all-devouring death. The Lord, in the shape of death, takes away everything that is created by the conditioned soul. Everything in this material world is subject to perish in due course of time. However, all the strength of time cannot hamper the activities of a devotee, for a devotee takes complete shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord. For this reason only is a devotee free from formidable time. All the activities of the karmis and jnanis which have no touch of devotional service are spoiled in due course of time. The material success of the karmis is destined to be destroyed. Similarly, the impersonal realization attained by the jnanis is also destroyed in due course of time. I will stop here for now and get later back to some other parts of the purport. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gramayam Darati Swabrantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vagishayasya vadane, Lakshmiryasya chavakshasi, Yasyaste hridaye samvit, tam narasimham aham bhaje pralada hridayaladam bhaktavidya vidaram sharatinduruchim vande paindra vandanam harim. Simply by expansion of his eyebrows, invincible time personified can immediately vanish the entire universe. However, formidable time does not approach the devotee who has taken complete shelter at your lotus feet. So the time factor is one of the main topics of the Bhagavad Gita. We all know there are 5 main topics, and one of these topics is Kala or Kala Shakti, the time factor. And it is to be found in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It's not so obvious if you would ask someone, where's the time factor in the Bhagavad Gita? We must maybe think a minute. Because the 11th chapter is the universal form, the Virat Rupa, and within there also Krishna makes the statement, I'm time, destroyer of the worlds. And Arjuna is being presented with a revelation of this very time factor. Maybe hear a bit more about it. So in the verse it is stated that the devotee, I guess we must say, the pure devotee is free from the influence of time, or formidable time does not approach the devotee. There are a few statements in the Srimad Bhagavatam and elsewhere that make this very point, that time does not affect those who dedicate themselves fully to the spiritual service to the Lord, to the devotional service of the Lord. Whereas it completely affects and controls and governs those who dedicate themselves to materialistic activities. So time is a very important energy of the Lord to contemplate on, because this is an energy that is very present in our lives. We constantly are governed or stressed or by time. Maybe just now we have our schedule, and time is running, and everything has to be done. And it is said by Sri Kapila Dev in the Sankhya philosophy, in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he discusses time a bit more elaborately. It is also listed as the 25th element of the creation. And the time factor is, in one sense, something that appears to be abstract. How do you grasp time? What is it? Even in physics and so on, definitions of certain energies or terms is often vague or not so clear. Also still there's discussion, what is even gravity? Although we know gravity is this and that, but also with time, these are concepts and it's not necessarily clear how to grasp them. In the Vaishnava philosophy, we understand time also as a person. Also the verse here says, time personified can immediately vanish the entire universe. So for each energy there's a personification. That's something particular about our theology as well. It's very personal. Everything is personal. Although there are impersonal aspects, but they belong always to a person. Energy belongs to an energetic, and so on. And Kapila Dev explains that the time factor is that causes fear of death. So time is a very terrible thing, actually. And it is also the main difference between the nature, or one of the main differences between the material world and the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, there's no time factor. There are statements that there's something of a kind of spiritual time, but this cannot be compared to what we know as time here. We hear, for example, that in the spiritual world, the seasons can coexist simultaneously, or activities, they actually don't really have a beginning, but they can continue endlessly. So there's a completely different concept of time. We cannot accommodate it actually in our mind. So in our world, time means there's beginning, there's end, and there's movement that makes change. So this is actually the essential nature of time. It makes things move. And time originates, or the Kala Shakti, manifests, better to say, from the glance of Mahavishnu when it comes to creation. We hear it in the Brahma Samhita. It is described how with the Lord's glance, with Mahavishnu's glance, quite a few energies are being sent out to take care of the work of creation. One is Ramadevi, which is one of his internal potency. There are the jivas, us, the living entities, they're being put in the material nature. And there's also Kala Shakti. And actually the material world, the energy, before it becomes something tangible that one can see and touch and experience, it's unmanifest, loose. It said the elements were just loosely, there was nothing concrete. And the time factor is that makes things manifest. It is the power that is responsible that actually the material nature becomes something firm, let's call it like this, goes from subtle to more gross matter. There's a whole explanation of the hierarchy of evolution of elements, also in the Sankhya philosophy of Kapila Dev. And always, whatever, beginning from ether and sound and then going to air and so on. And everything is governed by time. It's also said time is making us act. It said it stimulates also the karmic reactions. So, and we are driven to act. Of course, there are the modes of nature as well. They also come into play. But time factor is the main force. If it's time for this, you cannot escape it. We also say the time has come for this or that, or time's up. So time is always present, and it's actually the controller. And Kapila Dev explains in the third, in his instructions to his mother. I will quote him here in 3:26:16 to 18. He says, "The influence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is felt in the time factor, which causes fear of death due to the false ego of the deluded soul who has contacted material nature. My dear mother, O daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, the time factor, as I have explained, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom the creation begins as a result of the agitation of the neutral, unmanifest nature. By exhibiting his potencies, the Supreme Personality of Godhead adjusts all these different elements, keeping himself within as a supersoul and without as time." So the purports also explain that the way Krishna, or how does Krishna control material energy, it's in two main aspects. From within, he says, as the supersoul, Vishnu is governing, and externally through time. So this is his instrument also of control and governing the nature. It's also in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 5th canto, gives some time measurements. How is time measured? And there's the beginning of the duration that one atom takes to connect with another is the basis for time calculation. So who can observe atoms? Obviously very exalted personalities with higher vision. But this is the Srimad Bhagavatam time calculation where it starts. In the 5th canto this is explained, and there are all kinds of time measurements listed, how much is this and how much is that. So we can see time moves, and as soon as something moves, something changes. Let's say if you would move around, you change your position. If you change your position, you change your feeling of body. But also you influence a situation. So everything is constantly changing due to time. Then also the decay of things. Because atoms are being moved, particles are being moved, our body ages. Or our thoughts go away again. So everything is constantly changing, and therefore it's unstable. And because it is like this, therefore we are afraid. Not even so consciously, sometimes deep down there's always a fear of loss and fear of death. Death is an uncertainty because we also don't know, we don't see practically what comes afterwards or what's happening to me. I don't have control. It's a big cause of fear for many people, particularly also nowadays when things get we are again in a period of time where things get more uncertain in many ways. Economically, ecologically, socially, and so on. So this causes fear. We would like to be in control, at least a bit, that we can secure our daily lives and so on. And the counterpart would be to have full faith in Krishna's guidance or in the supreme will, that even if I don't try to control and arrange things, that Krishna sees what I need and will be there to provide and support me. Because also here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, no, actually the verse says, time does not approach the devotee who has taken complete shelter at your lotus feet. So the time factor is also particularly approaching those who are averse to God. It's like the material world is considered like a prison. Durga Devi is the governing deity. Durga even means kind of like prison. The very word means that. And we could say, I don't know the English word, time is the Gefängnisaufseher, the person who is in charge, like practically, and to arrange things. So time is controlling everyone, particularly. And Srila Prabhupada also used to point out, for the atheist, time is God. Almighty. We can't bargain. It just forces its will. And Srila Prabhupada sometimes points also out the foolishness of materialistic people when they ask, for example, their doctor or something, give me some more time. Just give me a few more months. I have to do this and I have to do that. And he says, how can any conditioned soul give time to anyone? No one can give time to anyone. Additional. Time span is there. We all have our allotted 100 years, it is said. It's relative to the body and it's also regarded to breathing, or like it's considered like you have so many breaths in your lifespan. And the yogis, for example, who advanced, they can control their breath. They breathe slower, so their duration of time becomes in a sense longer, but the number of breaths remains the same, but they can extend these breaths on a period of time. So these are a few thoughts on the time energy. And I would like to also shortly go back to what we said before, that in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is being presented with this time factor. He actually asked for the Virat Rupa, and then Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains that Krishna thought, okay, let me first show myself as the super soul of matter, Mahavishnu. That would be in the first in 11:10 to 13, these shlokas describing actually how Arjuna is seeing the wonderful manifold forms of Vishnu governing the material nature. And then Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains Krishna's thinking is, if I have shown him that, and if he is fit to see more, I will show him the time factor. And this comes later than in the verses 21 to 31. I will not read through all of them, but it's a thing for itself. It's a graphic description, and but there he sees time factor, and we can go connect it also what Kapila Dev says. The super soul and time are very closely connected, because time is a tool also of Vishnu for controlling material nature. So also the Bhagavad Gita says in the 13th chapter that Vishnu develops all living entities, but also he destroys them. Vishnu is not just the maintainer, he actually also governs the destruction through time. So it's his energy. And our aim is, okay, become free from the influence of time. So and how does that work? So it's about like becoming rather wanting to be controlled by Vishnu in a form of, or by God in a sense of, I would like to tune into your will, be your tool. And in this way, Krishna guides me, he places me in there. Because if I'm independent, if I maybe deny Krishna or like, be kind of in an atheistic spirit, then time takes charge of me and I will identify with the body, and because time makes it move, makes it constantly change, I will always be in fear and suffering. And if I can detach myself from the conception of I am this body, the less also time affects me. Because this is the whole principle of material world, the illusion that I'm identified with asat, with that which is temporary, and forget that I'm sat, eternal. So that's a big step in spiritual life. It's not a small step, it's the beginning step. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada makes it like, okay, this is the first thing you understand, and then move on to the next. But we often stand there like, oh, in our daily lives, and like, how much do we really live in that consciousness that we are a spirit soul, that we have an eternal identity, no need to fear anything actually. So it's quite a developmental step. And time is also given, give me a second, now I need to. There's an interesting imaging of how time can be imagined, because there's something often we don't have so much available to us. So in the 3rd canto, chapter 21, text 18, it is said, the Supreme Lord is approached, or like spoken to, and he says, your wheel, which has 3 naves, rotates around the axis of the imperishable Brahman. It has 13 spokes, 360 joints, 6 rims, and numberless leaves carved upon it. Though its revolution cuts short the lifespan of the entire creation, the wheel of tremendous velocity, some words I also don't get here, cannot touch the lifespan of the devotees of the Lord. So Prabhupada opens the purport, the time factor cannot affect the span of life of the devotees. And he refers also in this verse already to another verse. He says, in another verse it is stated that when the sun rises and sets, it takes away the life of all living entities, but it cannot take away the life of those who are engaged in the devotional service. Yeah, time is compared here to a big wheel which has 360 joints, 6 rims, in the shape of seasons, and numberless leaves in the shape of moments. So the leaves represent moments, and the rims, or Speichen, the shape are the seasons. It rotates on the eternal existence Brahman. So I think it's a good image to imagine time also as a wheel. Often you have, naturally time, often we have also here, we have a round shape, and it rotates, makes movements, they repeat. Like with seasons, we feel seasons are there, like they will always come and end based on the dictate of time. And perhaps it would be something that's helpful to meditate upon, how time is constantly affecting everything, to just be aware of it in its nature of the supreme, being the supreme mover of things. We are often aware of time in a sense of numbers, how much duration do we have for this or this and that, and how long is my day. But then let's also, in the same time, contemplate how am I actually not affected by time, the self. How that what is affected by time is my body. So it's a practice of becoming aware. Then allowing changes as well. Sometimes big changes are only actually difficult in the beginning because we're not willing to. We don't want to let go, we don't want to have something that we do not know, don't have control. But if we allow ourselves to be open for change and to let go, things become easy. So the change is actually not a problem. It's our attitude towards change that will be or is a problem. And the ultimate change, death, that's the biggest challenge. So therefore actually life, spiritual life, may also be getting prepared for the final blow of time. In that sense, time also gives like the little blows in between, but has the final blow, in which we are challenged to let go just everything. And that was a nice point from. There's this YouTube channel which is about philosophies, and they make some really good clips presenting different philosophies. And it was in German, so I have to see if I can get it. And they spoke about those Stoica or Stoics and their philosophy. And this is very similar. They have really some understandings that practically share our viewpoint, or like we share that where we want to see it. And they also point out, he gives once a metaphor. He says, act in life as if you are invited on a big dinner table, but you are a guest. And you wait till you're being served with whatever you're being served. You don't become impatient or whatever, and then you accept what you get. So accepting a supreme will, you don't try to force your desires on everything, but you be kind of humble and accept everything you get. And then also he says, if something is taken away from you, you lose a person or you lose this and that. He says, think of it as you giving something back. It was given to you, and now you give it back. I find it a really nice thought. It's not saying, oh, I've lost something, or something was taken away from me, so now I gave something back. Always having in mind, okay, I do not possess everything actually. It's not mine. It's Krishna's, and he handed it to me. Okay, now it's the time to give it back. So I find it a really nice meditation. So in this spirit, it can be a different attitude. It's not I lose things, okay, now I give things back. If it's like a loss, for example, of a person, or this person, yeah. So that I consciously allow to let go. Would be that. And the verse here Prabhupada refers to here in the purport, saying, there's a verse saying, is from the 3rd chapter of the 2nd canto, text 17, where it is said, both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. And he says here in the purport, he speaks how the activities that are referred to here, a slight beginning of such activities is sufficient even to deliver a person from the great ocean of material fears. As a highly potent drug injected intravenously, if I pronounce this correctly, whatever, acts at once on the whole body, the transcendental topics of the Lord injected through the ear by the pure devotee of the Lord can act very efficiently. Oral realization of the transcendental messages implies total realization, just as fructification of one part of a tree implies fructification of all other parts. This realization for a moment in the association of pure devotees like Shukadev Goswami prepares one's complete life for eternity. And thus the sun fails to rob the pure devotee of his duration of life, inasmuch as he is constantly busy in the devotional service of the Lord, purifying his existence. And now he says, death is a symptom of the material infection of the eternal living being. Only due to material infection is the eternal living entity subjected to the law of birth, death, old age, and disease. So it's also again a strong metaphor saying death or being affected by time is like an infection because we are in touch with matter. And if you are cured from materialistic consciousness or like being situated in our spiritual position, which is also a big step in spiritual life. It's not so easily because I think, oh yeah, I do some service and I chant and I read. That's not necessarily equating being fully situated in your spiritual position. It means like that you're really grounded in that you're conscious of it, and that like your whole being is governed by this understanding of your spiritual nature and your relationship to Krishna. And he says, like, I find it interesting, inspiring to say this what is happening here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The words emanating from this pure devotee, like the conscious, proper exchange between guru and disciple, is like a powerful injection of medicine through the ear, which purifies the consciousness, which leads to like our infection of materialistic consciousness being cured, and thus we become free of the influence of time. So I think it's very they're very important images and metaphors given that give us something to contemplate and to in our daily lives, to just create some more awareness of that, because that's also the idea. What we do with information, try to process it, try to contemplate on it, and to see how can it guide us also, or like influence us positively in our daily activities. And that was actually already it, what I got to say. So we'll open up for questions, comments.
Thank you. You mentioned how we have this fear, underlying fear of changes in life, and of fear of unknown, especially. That's something that's coming to us that we are not prepared for. So therefore, it seems like that's also one reason why astrology is so popular, because it gives you little hack, little hint of what your karma will bring you in the future. Because, this anxiety of what's going to happen. But astrology is a tool given by Krishna, kind of, to perhaps help.
Yes.
Maybe you want to say something about it?
The astrology is also, I think Srila Prabhupada here in the purport, no, I don't see it. But yeah, through this also, the times or time periods that we will experience or not experience in our life are being kind of laid out to us. So it can give us some calm or like certainty, or, give us some orientation, what to expect, what perhaps not to expect, to not set ourselves for frustration. Yeah. Yes, well, because time is not, it's not that everything is uncertain. We often just don't know how to also read things. It's also said that the body is, as if you can read the body as like a text or like a picture, like the physiognomy, I say in English, the kind of the way of like how your body tells who you are and what's happening, or like palm reading. So there's so many. It's actually an open book, but if you don't know how to read it, it's a mystery to us. Like the Bhagavad Gita is also said to be an open secret. Everyone can read the Bhagavad Gita, but it doesn't mean you get really full benefit from reading it if your consciousness or like attitude or intelligence isn't there. So in terms of time also, like there can be predictions can be made, of course, based from what is now, what will be in the future, or like what is now can be traced back to cause and effect, or why this is now because. So the material world has laws, and time is just putting the things into place based on actions and reaction. But also it said the time factor makes when the living entities, the souls, enter into Garbhodakasha Vishnu's abdomen, the time of Brahma's night. So and then before they come out, it said, or like when they come out, it said time is pushing them, reactivating or making them aware again. These are your desires you still cherish. Okay, now go for it. Do this, do that, and then the living entities act based on that. Any other comments, questions?
How we can come to the realization that we are not the body, because usually we are just thinking we are this body, and we hear perhaps sometimes here in the Bhagavatam class that we are not the body, but in fact when we are just living, it's usually, oh, this hurts me, oh, I have to eat something. How we can come to this realization that we are the spirit soul?
There are quite a few processes the Bhakti Yoga tradition offers. Maybe we can just name a few. I mean, one simple thing is like, one aspect is certain tapasyas, or renunciation. That we learn to experience limitations of our bodies or boundaries, but also possibilities that we did not expect. For example, when you do fasting. Fasting must be done in a proper way, of course, not just randomly and excessively and whatever. But if you can make the experience, particularly on Ekadashi fast, you first go with less. Maybe you, depending how capable you feel like with fasting. Not everyone is capable. Like not everyone should fast also, based on physical constitution. But then you see, oh, I can go with less. For example, eat just twice a day instead of 3 times. Or just once a day instead of 3 times. And then I maybe leave aside, then I may leave aside certain things that I eat. So, and I make the experience, hey, actually, I don't need many things, often I want them. So that we come to a realization between what are wants and what are needs. Needs are that you have to provide the body. Wants are that which is additional. I like to enjoy that. If it comes to eating, it can also be, because often we eat, not only because we need to maintain our body, there are also emotional aspects to it, or we just want to enjoy. So, and by, for example, practicing a fast, maybe going without food even, you push your body to a boundary seeing, hey, actually I can go along without food even for a day. And afterwards, some people feel after the first days, or the evening is always, for me, the most difficult thing. Over the day, not so much, but in the evening, it's like, I want to eat something or whatever. And if you do it the next day, you will be less hungry. Because many things are habit. And habits, if you want to change them, you have to break them in some way by acting differently. And this is an experience that can lead you more to experience I'm actually not this body, or at least by not obeying the body in so many ways, but trying to not here control myself or here restrain myself. The same thing is with sleep. I'm not a good example. I sleep way too much. But it's also something for sadhana that you try to limit. You try to decrease physical needs. And that allows you an experience that you can go with way less often. And this is already a step toward realizing, hey, I don't have to obey every need and want of my body. And another more like also, let's say, philosophical exercise is also provided in the Bhagavad Gita in the 2nd chapter. It said, Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha, ubayo vidarishtantas tvanayos tattvadarshibhi. It is said that those who have realized the difference between the self and the body, saying that the body is impermanent, asat, nasato vidyate bhavo, and then the self is eternal without change, they have come to this conclusion by having studied the nature of both. So they have applied their intelligence, their cultivated knowledge, seeing also intellectually, rationally differences between body and self. So that's why we have some philosophical training. We try to see through the eyes of Shastra and try to realize that. But what I find even more important is like that we cultivate a positive identification with the Lord as spirit souls. That we contemplate every day, I'm actually a spark emanating from the sun, the same nature, and I belong to Krishna eternally. That we have not just this, I'm not this body and then what, but that we have positive identification. So these are a few things. I guess there can much more things can be found. You know, service is also one thing, which is very important, because what does service mean? True service, genuine, authentic service is you let go of egotistic mentality, serving yourself, your body, and try to give to Krishna, to others. And also in this way, you detach yourself from certain needs or wants you have. One must be careful not to artificially try to deny oneself, but this is also like service is essential. All right? All right. Hare Krishna. Granted Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I was really wondering these days, I never heard
Jai Jagannath.